Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are, tennis fans, wherever you're watching from. I hope you've enjoyed the last 7 days of tennis as much as Jack and I have. Let's get straight to it, Jack. We had four tournaments of note last week on the ATP and WTA tour. I think that's one less than the previous week, where it seemed to be even more hectic. Of which of the four shall we start on for last week?
I'm keen to start with Astana. I think, John, we're probably the biggest story of the week was going on, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, by the way, I say, where do you want to start? And you say Astana, and I'm thinking, oh, yeah, that's right. It was in Astana. Just because the top of my head is a Serbian, and then the location, and then everyone else, if you like.
Yeah, that makes sense. I get what you mean.
So tell me your thoughts on what happened there, and then I'll interject.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest story of the week's got to be the semi-final, right, between Djokovic and Medvedev. The match of the year that didn't happen, the retirement from Medvedev in the second set, was shaping up to be an absolute epic. The best moment for me of the match, just this really, really sort of heartfelt moment from Djokovic that you don't see too often. This really sincere moment when Medvedev turned to him and he told him he was retiring, and the look in his face, like, I'm so up for this, man. Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? What are you doing right now? We're about to play one of the matches of the season, and you're bailing on me now. It was really nice to see. I've got loads of thoughts on it, John, but yeah,
Go on, share them.
Yeah, I'll just dive into a bit of what was going on and stuff, matchup wise. You know, Medvedev had played the match before, playing against RBA 6-1, 6-1.
I watched that. I watched that very closely and was just stunned.
Yeah, well, so was I. It was alien. He hit 3 ground stroke unforced errors, and then I think 300 other balls basically that were makeable balls into the court. So you're talking 1 in 100 unforced errors from the back of the court, literally, which is just wild. And RBA had nothing he could do against him, obviously, when he's in that sort of mood, and his backhand's an absolute wall. There's not much anybody can do. And Djokovic is the best example of that, obviously having probably the best backhand of all time. He couldn't hit through Medvedev. He was hitting 18. Hi, Hanya. He was hitting 18 backhand unforced errors. It was wild to see. And when Medvedev's in that sort of mood, he forces such a high level out of Djokovic. He was playing forehands that were really, Djokovic was playing forehands that were really, really sort of low margin, redlining it, going for really, really big serves, serving volleys every so often, drop shots here and there. The tactics were just really, really sort of frenzied and all over the place in a good way. You know, it was just really, really exciting, and loads of different stuff going on. I loved it, John.
Just a pity that it did end like that. I mean, I'll just wind back as well to the RBA match, because I did, for Medvedev, I did see this as a sort of a mini turning point, perhaps in his year, albeit coming in October, if you like. And it did fill me with if he'd have narrowly beaten RBA and then gone into that Djokovic match, I'd have thought, okay, maybe this will be a step too far. But the way he played Medvedev against RBA made me think, oh, wow, this is back and maybe better than ever before. I mean, listen, even when he was on fire a year ago, I don't remember him producing performances at that level against that quality of opponent. And I even tweeted, I don't know if I gave it a great deal of thought, but I tweeted ahead of the Djokovic semi-final that maybe Medvedev going into this match as an underdog, and a clear underdog, I would say, against Djokovic before the match started, despite what happened against RBA, maybe do him a favor. I mean, I don't think Medvedev would have gone into a match for probably since the US Open final 13 months before as an underdog in that manner. He went into the Australian Open final, for me and for many other observers, as the favorite. Maybe one or two would have gone for Nadal, but it certainly wasn't clear either way. I know they played again in Mexico a few weeks later, but you're thinking along fairly similar lines. And then the thing is, Medvedev this year, okay, clay court season apart, but don't forget he went out to Cilic at the French Open, and he was injured as well. So I couldn't think, and he didn't play Wimbledon, and every hard court match he had during the American summer swing, if you like, he was going out early. I'm calling it the summer swing. I've just coined that expression, thinking of the sunshine swing that we have earlier in the year. But you know what I mean? I don't think in the previous year he would have gone into a match as an underdog like that. He kept going out to people he was expected to beat over the last year.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I think when Medvedev steps onto a hard court against basically anybody else, he is the bookie's favourite. He's the favourite just in general, opinion favourite, I guess. Everybody expects him to win, basically. Djokovic is maybe the only guy that can that can make him not the favourite, but also given his form as well, he was probably not a heavy underdog, but I would have said like 2-1 or something like that. You know, about as far odds as you could have got for a Medvedev Djokovic matchup as you would have had in the last two or so years, for sure. So yeah, it was really, really great to see him. Definitely back to his best. Definitely his best tournament of the year, I would say, in terms of level. Obviously, Australia maybe a little closer, but then you've always got the damp squib for him at the end of the tournament that maybe kind of darkens his memories of that, obviously. But yeah, I would have said overall, consistently, his form here was the best I've seen all year, and it was such a shame that it ended like that.
Yeah, so let's move on to the semi-final. By the way, on the other side of the draw, we've got Tsitsipas and Rublev doing pretty well. I guess, again, though, with both of those players, and we'll obviously return to Djokovic and the final as well in a second, with both of those players, they're kind of just sort of, for me, both of them throughout this year they've not pulled up any trees. They've not had a standout win. You know, I think of Tsitsipas on clay in 2021 and thinking it's neck and neck between him, Djokovic, and Nadal for the French Open, and it kind of panned out that way in so many ways. And I just haven't seen him, with the exception of maybe a win against Sinner, but he's still the senior of Sinner. I'm talking about in Australia. He's still Sinner's senior, if you like, and he would have gone into that match as the favourite. I would argue now, if the two met on a hard court in particular, given that I think Tsitsipas has he won 1 or 0 hard court titles in his career? He's not won many, put it that way. It's either 0 or 1. Because I remember when I predicted Tsitsipas for some outlandish reason to win the US Open, John Wertheim said he's only won 1 or 0 hard court titles.
I can think of a couple off the top of my head. There's definitely the World Tour Finals, obviously, which was probably the biggest hard court title of his career for sure. Okay. And then you had a few 250s, right? Montpellier, maybe some other ones at the start of the year.
Maybe major titles then on a hard court. Okay, you've got the end of year finals as probably being a major or a Masters level, if you like. But yeah. So anyway, but I just feel as though Tsitsipas has stagnated. Rublev to some extent as well. He didn't quite set the world alight in the way that Tsitsipas did in 2021, I would argue, but. Both of those players, when they met, I don't know if you saw that semi-final. I only saw bits of it. But it was kind of a feeling of, we're all waiting for Medvedev Djokovic in a way.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Let's give them a bit of due diligence, right? But I mean, the two players have been getting to the semis and finals of tournaments consistently. We had Rublev at the start of the year going on a, whatever match streak it was, maybe 16 or 17, right? Because he did tear through 500s in Rotterdam and Dubai as well, right? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he won Dubai,
yeah. He was playing really, really great, and he wins against players he's meant to win against. It's just he never really gets those big scalps, right? And whereas for Tsitsipas, I mean, he has been performing really, really well on clay in particular, and he's still getting to the latter stages of hard court tournaments as well. So they're the second best, right? They're the sort of second tier of player at the moment, and maybe that's why everybody sort of feels a little bit disappointed in them. But that's still a really, really big deal. They're proving they deserve to be in the ATP finals, deserve to be in the top 10. That's still a big deal, definitely.
Yeah, fair enough. So back to Djokovic. The way the match ended against Medvedev was a little bit sort of out of nowhere because, and I think I saw a screenshot from Gil Gross that he froze, I think 3-1 in the tiebreak, which suggested this is the moment when probably, because I was also wondering if at one point maybe it was something he carried into the match and then it obviously got worse, if you like, because that would then explain maybe the sudden retirement. But actually, Gil Gross's screenshot suggested this is the moment when it kicks off, if you like, at 3-1 in the tiebreak. I'm guessing to Medvedev's advantage at that point. But either way, it did come to an abrupt end, and Djokovic was as surprised as anyone that it ended that way.
Yeah, I remember seeing it and being very surprised, but in hindsight, the way Medvedev was talking about it, he said it started quite early on in the tiebreak. He did say, anybody who thinks that it's a little bit of a shock retirement or maybe it shouldn't have happened, whatever, Medvedev said that if he'd continued to play by the end of the set, he probably would have ended up missing about half the year, probably, he said, just as a prediction, because that's the sort of injury it felt like it was really, really serious. And he said if he had won, he wouldn't have played the final as well. So we would have seen, a retirement in the final. So I think it's fair enough. And it's also the second time he said in his career he's done it, like retired like that with a pulled muscle apparently. So it doesn't happen often, and it's not a very Medvedev thing to do, to pull out of a match like that. So.
Is there a prognosis on this? Because I'm wondering, with Paris-Bercy on the horizon, end of year finals probably happening in about a month from now, pulled muscles, etc., can be a few weeks.
No prognosis, but the way Medvedev was talking about it, his quote was, "You can probably miss half a year instead of 1 month." So he's talking about it like he's going to have a bit of time off. Nothing official. But that's the way he's talking about it sounds like he will have a little bit of time to recover. That
time span would be my immediate thoughts on that, as in like 4 or 5 weeks, which would of course mean he'd be out of Paris-Bercy and touch and go for the ATP finals. It's such a pity because, I mean, like I said, for 9 months he's been in the doldrums, I would suggest. I know he's won 1 tournament in that time, but pulling up any trees at Roland Garros or at the US Open, and then this performance against RBA, which was out of the blue, but great. But then he continued. So the thing is, as well, it wasn't like he just did the RBA one. He was phenomenal for 2 sets. Was he the better player for those 2 sets? Is that fair, or am I being a bit harsh on Djokovic?
No, I think that is fair. He probably won more points, I would imagine.
Djokovic said something like that as well.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, I would say he's definitely the better player for those 2 sets. So, it's such a shame.
Djokovic, though, proceeds to the final and goes on to seal his second tournament in a row. I think that's now 9 matches in a row that he's won. This one possibly being even more impressive given the opposition he had to face at various points throughout this tournament. And he won the final fairly comfortably against Tsitsipas.
Yeah, oh my God, we were talking about this yesterday. It was about as predictable as you could have got, right? The third 6-3, 6-4 win over Tsitsipas in a final that Djokovic has had in his career. Just one of those ones where Tsitsipas didn't have a chance on return. Djokovic rolls to a couple of breaks of serve, 1 apiece in each set. Can you hear that, by the way, John? Is that quite loud?
Yeah, I can, but it's fine.
Okay, yeah. Hopefully, okay.
Is that someone building a tennis court or something?
Building a tennis court in the back garden, yeah. It was such a shame to see Tsitsipas just come out with a performance that was exactly the same as every other time they play on a hard court, right? So, just a bit of a shame for Tsitsipas not to come up with something a bit better. Didn't learn anything. Love 9 and 500 finals as well now, John. So Tsitsipas, really, really struggling in that. Although I will say, and Vance pointed this out on Twitter, that all the opponents he's played in 500 finals have been exceptional, and it's probably not a 500 final thing. It's just kind of coincidental, right? Because he's won other tournaments of bigger, on a hard court as well. So
I mean, it's like when you hear, I mean, they have changed this narrative in the last year or so, but it's like when you hear that Djokovic and Nadal haven't won a 250 for like 5 years, I don't think they're really too preoccupied by that. I mean, they've changed that narrative this year for various reasons, but it doesn't. I mean, with Tsitsipas, my bigger concern is the broader picture, if you like, at the absolute biggest tournaments. Whether he wins a 500 at any point in his career, it's kind of less relevant. I just want to come back to Djokovic, though, anyway, and show this screen. With yesterday's win, just winning the game or winning the match itself, he does now overtake, unsurprisingly, Rafa, who was just 0.01% ahead of him, so to speak, in terms of actually winning matches. So obviously this is going into, if he's obviously winning 83 matches out of every 100 is obviously what this is suggesting with his win-loss record there. And he just creeps past Rafa, his long-term rival, during this tournament. It is insane. Do we take a lot of stock from this last 2 weeks in terms of Novak's year, Novak's standing, the GOAT debate? Does this give us a reminder of who really is the boss on a hard court, bearing in mind what Alcaraz did in New York?
Absolutely. I mean, I think I was saying it after his 1 win against Tiafoe even in the Laver Cup, and just saying this guy's the best hardcourt player in the world, and he's just reminded the whole world of that. And 2 weeks later, or 3 weeks later, whatever it is, 2 titles on the bounce, 10 wins in a row or so. He has got a point to prove given how little he's played this year. and he's come out at the latter stage of the year. Arguably his favourite time of the year, by the way, in terms of winning percentage and titles, etc. And he's putting a mark on it, and he's looking unstoppable. And I really think he's hungrier than ever in the World Tour finals. This should be by far his best year within the last 7 years. When he's not won it, of him winning the title again.
I mean, he did talk about a renewed hunger as well, which is unbelievable for a guy who's won 21 majors. But there we go. That's Djokovic. There'll be plenty more from him, no doubt, for the rest of the year. He's fit, firing on all cylinders. So let's move on to Ostrava in the Czech Republic, where we had a home winner at the end of the tournament with Barbora Krejčíková. Is that how you say it?
Krejčíková,
yeah, one of those two. Someone can let us know either in the comment section below or in the live chat where the stress is on the various syllables there. But anyway, Barbora, she managed to win her home tournament. Of course, that's back-to-back tournaments for someone who's been also, I would argue, in the doldrums, funny enough, since probably the French Open of 2021. You could argue, of course, that she had a decent start to the year. I think she got to the quarterfinals in Australia. So, doldrums is maybe a slight exaggeration. But then she had that elbow injury. And actually, I just found out something today that she was on the verge of dropping out of the top 30 until this little run that she's just had. And that would be the first time outside the top 30 since she won in Roland Garros last year. What are your thoughts on her return? And surprising, I would suggest.
Definitely surprising. I think she had a good end of the year in 2021 as well. It was definitely the start of this year, and she was injured for a while, to be fair, and coming back from injury at the French Open, as you say, the first round against Paris. We should of course establish from last time it is a first round and not second round. It was it was really that wasn't too surprising. She was she was really undercooked. It wasn't so much pressure. It wasn't so much a lack of form. She just hadn't played, and it was coming back from that. At the same time, it's very surprising she's managed to pick up her form to the point of basically top 10 level, maybe even top 5. I would say she's looking like one of the 5 best players in the world right at the moment. That it really is surprising. It's just happened all of a sudden. At the same time, you watch her play and you kind of wonder why she hasn't been closer to the top of the game for a long time, because the way she played against Iga Swiatek was absolutely phenomenal.
Any concerns for Iga in general?
No, this was a great match, and it's a good matchup for Krejčíková. She's got a great serve out wide. That's the most important thing for me, because it stops Swiatek from teeing off on her forehand return, which is a massive deal. There's not many players who can hit that sliding serve in the juice court as well as Krejčíková. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing, the way she defended from that forehand side as well to stop Swiatek's forehand cross court being super effective was really impressive. Some squash shots to keep the ball low, for example, to stop Swiatek from attacking the ball as easily as she would have liked. You even saw Swiatek coming into the net because of that. And how often do you see net approaches from Swiatek, especially in a tight third set like that? So she was making Swiatek come up with something different. It was really impressive, and it would be a great rivalry to see for years to come. But obviously, there's no guarantee Krejčíková's form keeps up like this. Who really knows, I guess. It's maybe too early to say, John, is all I'm thinking.
Yeah, right. But listen, I think we did touch on this, I think, a couple of weeks ago or last week when we chatted. Might just be coming a bit too late, this form, to make the WTA end-of-year finals. I think her ranking is around about 14 at the moment, but in the race, she may be a little bit lower down. So it may just come too late unless she has an unbelievable, basically a perfect end to the year, I would imagine. Listen, a few other things that I picked up on. Obviously, this is back-to-back titles for her now, having won in Tallinn last week. I think also the level of opponents that she's beaten has been pretty impressive. So it's not like she's picking up some of these, the non-big tournaments by just getting fortunate draws. That's Iga's first loss in a final since 2019. Again, I don't think we can take too much stock from that. I mean, she's the world number 1 by a long way. She's winning majors. She's won her first major off clay recently, and probably not playing her best. As you can even see from that image, I just think that I don't think she's too downhearted. I know images can be deceptive, but I think she understands that the process has been a pretty good one for her this year.
This could have always happened. I think you gotta realize that Krejčíková really stepped up her game in all the other finals that Swiatek has played. I would argue the opponent hasn't come up with something incredibly special, and it will take something incredibly special to challenge Swiatek in a final. Also, a lot of matchup differences working in Krejčíkova's favour. The surface as well, indoor hard, probably a little bit more serve-centric, which wouldn't suit Swiatek. And she still played a great match. I mean, at the tail end of that match, 6 match points saved, or 5 maybe, before Krejčíková converted her last, and some of the match point saves were an absolute joke. There we go. Yeah, it was wild. Obviously, if Swiatek had went on to win the match, that game would have went down as one of the most exciting games in history. But I suppose it's just the full stop on an otherwise exciting match. Yeah, I loved it, and I wouldn't be too worried about Swiatek. She played great. A lot of stuff not going in her favour from the get-go, and still managed to make it incredibly competitive. As I say, I would argue Krejčíková, in terms of matchup and conditions, was in some ways the favourite. But obviously, in a final, Swiatek's always going to be the favourite. But yeah,
sure.
Just saying it's not as surprising as some people might think it is.
The elbow injury that Krejčíková had between Australia and Roland Garros undoubtedly has played her part in this sort of disappearance from the top level of the game, so to speak. And in fact, since Australia, she hadn't beaten a top 30 player. So also top 30 player, but also she had a chance of falling out the top 30. So both coincidental there. Since January, she hadn't even made a semi-final, I believe, of any tournament until the last 2 weeks. So this is a big turnaround for her, and long may it continue. There was one other tournament on the women's side in Tunisia, but things didn't quite go to plan for the home player on Jabeur and obviously home favourite.
Yeah, such a shame. Really such a shame, because you could see how much it meant to Jabeur from the start of the tournament, playing 2 matches back-to-back that were pretty flawless from her, amazing in return, really able to sort of assert her dominance against Anne Lee and Rodina in both those matches, pretty easy. And then against Claire Liu, and a player of the same sort of build as Anne Lee, definitely the sort of player that she could have gotten into every return game, basically, and really sort of put the pressure on her opponent. But she was obviously really nervy from the way she was playing. A lot of double faults, not able to save break points. I think 6 out of 7 break points converted by Liu. It was just such a shame that she performed like that. And there was maybe a sense of, I don't know, not inevitability about it, but certainly I knew there was going to be a match where she would feel nervous during the tournament. And honestly, I thought she'd still get through it. So, it was like 4-all in the third set, and she was up 30-15. And it really did take a lot of mucking up, basically, to lose from that position, because it was some really poor serving, some really poor missed shots, and just all of a sudden the game was handed to Liu. So it was kind of out of nowhere. She really went crazy at herself, more so than I've never ever seen from Jabeur. She was absolutely screaming at herself in that 4-all game. She was obviously incredibly frustrated and really wanted to win. So it's kind of heartbreaking at the same time as well. Such a shame. But it's not the first time we've seen this. Just before I ask for your thoughts as well, John, people playing at home this year, feeling nervy. Swiatek against Garcia in Warsaw, right? You also had, of course, that's the other example I'm thinking of. Sorry, Jabeur in Tunisia. But the point is, it's very rare for a home winner to win at their home tournament. Barty did it this year in Adelaide in Australia. Bouzkova did it in Prague, and then we had Krejčíková in Ostrava, and that's the only times it's happened this year. 3 times, or 3 different players.
Yeah, on the women's side, you mean? Yeah.
Yes,
true.
yeah.
Yeah, so it is tricky, and I understand that. I mean, perhaps also in New York at the US Open, we saw 1 or 2 fancied Americans that sort of went out in the quarterfinal stage. At least I was maybe slightly surprised that Coco didn't quite go all the way, if you like, in terms of getting to the final. But there we go. That's what happened. Elise Mertens goes on to win the title. That's her first title of the year. She is a sort of a decent player, if you like, a good player who obviously this is her 7th career title. I'm just checking these stats now. She beat Elise Cornet in the final. Elise Cornet, by the way, is someone else who's had a really good 2022 and supposedly retiring at some point. I think she's got her eye on Roland Garros next year as that stop.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, by the way, Elise Cornet had highlighted this year being her last year. She's then hinted at it being postponed until the French Open of next year. But I don't know. She's playing the best tennis of her career. I mean, in Australia, for example, I think she got to the quarterfinals, and she'd never got to the quarterfinals in Australia before. I think she never got to the quarterfinals of a major before, and the closest she'd come to it was like 15 years ago when she was playing, and the person was interviewing her on the court, and the name escapes me right now, maybe Gary or something. She's being interviewed on the court by the person who beat her 15 years before
Really?
to deny her a quarterfinal place in Australia. And this year, she obviously managed to get there. And so her form this year, and I know we're talking about her having just lost the final to Elise Mertens, but her 2022 has been amazing.
It's the best of her career for sure. Yeah. She had that kind of round of 16 monk in her back, right, in Grand Slams, and she never quite pushed past that, and then all of a sudden she does it at the Australian Open, gets to another round of 16 in Wimbledon, by the way, of course, defeating the world number one in the round of 32. She's had a great year. I don't think there's anybody that can take that away from her. She's been as consistent as she could be. She's just she's quite a counter puncher. She uses pace to her advantage. Actually, do you know what? I wouldn't have said it was matchup. I'm maybe being too kind there. I think she was a little nervous in this final, to be honest, from the way she was playing. Yeah, she wasn't really asking Mertens to hit through her a lot of the time. There was just unforced errors. Basically, she was going for too much herself, which isn't really her game. She likes to build points and stuff. So she looked nervous, I would have said. And it's not really a recurring theme. It just happens every so often, right, to any player. So yeah, a bit of a shame. But yeah, overall, great year. So nothing you can take away.
Somebody else who's had a good year, I would say, and maybe a great year would be a bit too strong, because I think there's been a couple of defeats that would have hurt, particularly in New York and to some extent at Wimbledon. And that's Taylor Fritz, who also won this week, beating Frances Tiafoe. Now, that's not the surprising element, but beating Frances Tiafoe via 2 tiebreaks.
Yeah, the streak of 13 for Tiafoe is broken twice in quick succession as well. Great record. I looked into the tiebreak to see if there was any sort of tactic that Taylor Fritz brought into that, or if there was anything that Tiafoe did wrong compared to other tiebreaks. Honestly, it's quite coincidental that Tiafoe won 13 tiebreaks in a row. Yeah, I suppose you could put it down to his serve and how great it's been. Able to go 130 mile an hour plus down the tee is a huge deal, and that's been a recurring theme over the last 2 months or so. At the same time, anybody winning 13 tiebreaks in a row, even Roger Federer, whatever that streak was, it might have been 15 or 16. There's a little bit of luck involved, because there was match point saves against Tsitsipas at the Laver Cup, wasn't there? Zapata Morales, even at the start of this tournament, was pretty close to stealing that record from him. Mm-hmm. You got to get a little lucky, and I suppose you shouldn't put too much focus on the record, I guess, is all I'm saying. It's just a tidy performance from Fritz, and it could have been 3 sets without tiebreaks. It's 2 sets with tiebreaks. Either way, I think Fritz deserved to win it.
I think regarding tiebreaks, I'll tell you what would be interesting is somehow if you could look at a player, say a top player, top 20 player, whatever, and look at how many tiebreaks do they win, and where are they at? So let's say they win 60% of the sets they play, okay, and yet they win 70% of their tiebreaks. Something like that would be like, okay. Because, I mean, by the way, Djokovic wins more tiebreaks than he loses. I guess Rafa Nadal does. I guess all of the best players will win more than they lose. But if you see the world number 85, who in a year, let's say, won 40% of their sets, but 85% of their tiebreaks, and as long as there was a decent sample size, you'd go, oh, that's interesting that they obviously do go into a tiebreak mode. People like Dominic Thiem certainly spring to mind. Djokovic as well, perhaps even more so than Rafa even. There is something, I don't know what, because I've heard Rafa say, I played a bad tiebreak. And I don't really know what that means in a way. And I'm a huge tennis fan, but, it doesn't really mean anything in a way. I played a bad tiebreak. Well, yeah, I served badly or whatever. Yeah, okay, fine. But what is going on in this moment of the match, Jack?
I suppose the one thing that makes tiebreaks different from anything else, you could consider a tiebreak a pressure moment, like a break point, like 30-all, like deuce. It's a moment where you have to play your best tennis because it's do or die, right? So I guess it's just how you deal with pressure is what it comes down to, and I think that's what Nadal is talking about all the time. How well did you deal with pressure in that moment? And that's what I would put it down to. It is a pressure moment, right? You gotta, every point counts as much as the last. So
Fine.
yeah.
Okay, so Fritz obviously winning there. That's good for him. I think he's now comfortably into the top 10. I think he broke into the top 10 a week before, and he's now in 8th. We had Kyrgios pulling out through injury. Don't quite know where his season will be at. Him and Medvedev, obviously, people to keep an eye on in terms of injuries. One final thing here, I think, before we do close. We've got a question here from Gary. A very broad question, but we can certainly address it. Who do you guys think will emerge as the best American player of this young generation? Jack, over to you first.
I've got an interesting answer for this, I think, because of course we've got Taylor Fritz at the top of the game at the moment. That would be your safest bet. As somebody who maybe has emerged already, he's in the top 10. Tiafoe obviously on the rise. The player I think has got the most potential is probably Sebi Korda, because he's got it all. I think he's got a great service game. He's got a great return game. He can hang with anybody from the back of the court when he's at his best. It's just a matter of time before he puts it all together. I think maybe give him a couple of years and we could see him in the top 10. He's seriously good. People kind of underrate him because he's not had the big wins yet, but you got to think about times when he's played his best and think if he could play that every week, eventually he might get to that stage, then he would be really, really difficult to challenge. Obviously that match with Nadal at Indian Wells comes to mind, right? And his level there was incredible. He was close to redlining his game that day, and then it was kind of nerves that got in the way at the end of the match. So if he can get over that, then he's got huge potential in front of him.
Okay, that did surprise me. I wrote down Brooksby as a possibility.
Okay.
I think he's a bit of a random player in a way, sort of a very good defensively, a good sort of wall at times. He frustrates and annoys opponents. I'm not saying that he's going to be world number 1 and win 10 majors or anything like that. But I don't know. Sebi Korda, he's 22. Maybe Brooksby is, what's Brooksby, 20 maybe?
Yeah, he's about 20. I mean, Brooksby's got loads of potential as well. He is, he's incredibly young. His game's so different, no, John. I feel like there's some matchups where he's going to absolutely excel and he'll be able to beat top 10 players that they won't have seen it coming. But then there's other players, within the 50 to 100 fringes that could have their day and beat Brooksby as well, because he's never gonna overpower anybody on a court, right? But yeah, he's got a lot going for him, so it's a good choice, John.
Yeah, maybe I'm taking a bit too much stock from the Djokovic match in New York in 2021, where
that was great. Yeah, that was great. The 6-1 set at the start, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think it was nip and tuck in the second set, and Djokovic ends up winning in 4. But it was a great match. It was a match that, and the other thing, just compared to Korda, but he's just 2 more years older, and probably in a way, him and Brooksby, it feels like, have achieved similar amounts. Maybe Korda's got a title or 2 that Brooksby doesn't have, but I don't know. It just feels like, but you may well have it right. And by the way, we could be clipping this in a year from now, and Korda has had a sensational 2023. And but you're right. I mean, that Indian Wells performance from Korda was very impressive, but he did lose. And it was a nerves thing, I think. And I think Rafa said he sensed that from the other side of the net. Gary also just giving a quick nod to the Brooksby-Djokovic match. But overall, Korda's his answer as well. So you're in good company there, Jack.
Nice, Gary. Good choice. Definitely.
Great. Listen, we've had a nice little chat about some of these tournaments. There's plenty more tournaments, of course, to come. I think we got Ijon this week. I certainly know in Northern Spain. I think Andy Murray's playing there. Am I right?
He is, yeah. He's playing the 6th seed Alejandro Davidovich Fokina in the first round.
Tricky one, especially against a home player, at least a Spanish player anyway. But good luck for Andy and the rest of the players there in Ijon. What other tournaments have we got this week? I've got my eyes on Paris-Bercy, but that's another couple of weeks away.
Can't remember off the top of my head, but I could tell you within just a few seconds. So
go on, give us what tournaments we've got this week, and then
we've also got we've got San Diego on the women's side. That's the WTA 500, so probably the biggest tournament of the week. And then Cluj-Napoca, is that how you pronounce the Romanian city? Romanian town?
Is it Cluj?
Cluj, that's it. Yeah. Cluj. Yeah, CLUJ. The one that Raducanu did okay in last year. That's the one.
Someone's just pulled out. I think Krejčíková may have just pulled out of that. Somebody's just pulled out this morning.
Yeah,
I think it's Krejčíková. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised at that. Definitely. They won another tournament as well, is in Florence in Italy on the men's side.
Cool. Jack, great having you on board again. And to everybody else, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you keep an eye out for this amazing competition that I announced yesterday. Follow us on Twitter at Talking Tennis TT with your answer to, and by the way, you can also put it in the comment section below this video, with your answer to the question of who won the men's US Open title singles this year. I mustn't forget to add that before I get some doubles fans on my back. And who won the women's US Open singles titles this year. If you answer those two questions correctly, you could win an amazing hat. I'm sure you're all very excited about that. I know Jack is pumped and gutted. I know it took you a few hours to get over the fact that I said that you couldn't enter this competition due to affiliation to the show. But nevertheless, get your answers in below in the comment section or tweet us at Talking Tennis TT. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Everyone else, thanks for stopping by.